All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Learning and Growing 2021 presentation, how I recreated an active learning statistics course for asynchronous online learning. My name is Shriver Hasbrook, and I'm a member of the training and support team here at Hawks Learning, and our presenter today is Tina Ragsdale. Professor Ragsdale is the Associate Professor of Mathematics, Developmental Math Coordinator, and Teaching Enhancement Coordinator at West Kentucky Community and Technical College. She has a Master of Science degree in mathematics from Southern Illinois University and 12 hours in Education Administration and Management from Murray State University. We will be having a live Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so please enter any questions you have at all into the Q&A area at the bottom of the Zoom window as we go. And on that note, I will go ahead and hand it over to our presenter.
I named that nice long just so that Shriver could have to say asynchronous for online. So as we get started here, hopefully I can share my screen. That's always the challenge, is to get the right screen shared and verify that I have the right screen, Shriver.
That looks good.
Okay, so active learning has been a project of mine for the last several years, and I've wanted in my face-to-face classes to increase active learning, and it has worked really successfully for me. I've seen an increase of success, and I'm trying to bring that into how do I make my online classes more engaging. I don't have synchronous online classes. We don't have synchronous meetings. So how can I do that, increase that engagement, and get those active learning type activities into my online classes? So part of my goals as my online in my active learning is that people, that they learn 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, 50% of what they see and hear, 70% of what they say and write, and 90% of what they do. So the more we can get them doing things, the more they're going to actually learn and remember. Bloom's taxonomy is something that I've learned to use in my lesson planning. In my face-to-face classes, I use somewhat of a flipped classroom design. It's not a full flipped classroom. I call it a modified flip. I want students to do something before class where they're maybe watching a video, maybe doing some type of activity where it's something that's they can do on their own to remember the activity of the day. They can look up vocabulary, they can read an assignment. Then we're going to do something where they can summarize what they've learned. They can, I can do a formative assessment. Then really in class, I'm going to do something that's an interactive lecture, an active learning activity. And then I want to finalize that lesson with really that higher order activity where we're up into that evaluating, creating. So I'm looking at how can I create my online classes using that kind of same lesson planning format. But I don't have that synchronous meeting time with them. So how can I design my online class using that kind of same format, but yet not have that synchronous time? So I want to be able to engage my students, and I want to use those activities that I had used in my face-to-face classes, but yet in an asynchronous format. I will say that I wasn't able to use everything because the class that I initially designed was a summer class. So we only met for 6 weeks. So I started with some abbreviated assignments, which I'm going to show you. The next time that I do this class is going to be a full semester class, which will be spring. So I'm also going to show you a few things that I have planned for that class. So the first thing I wanted to mention was that I learned my lesson on rubrics. When I created my first rubric, I should have talked to some of our humanities and English people, and I didn't create a good rubric because as you can see here, I had for 25% of the assignment, I said complete and factual. So the type of things that I was asking, did they answer the question correctly? Well, we use a Blackboard learning management system. I thought I had to have all 4 sections filled out. So I tried to figure out how am I going to fill out all 4 of those. So I made 100% of 75, of 50, and 25. I now know I could just do 100 and 0, 0, 0. So I could have made that just 2 sections because all I wanted to know was it right or wrong. Then they needed to reply to 3 other students, and I said, was it commented on a student with factual and thoughtful comments? Did they comment on a student with factual comments but not complete or short answers? Were they factual but very short, commented with some errors, and may not be complete? And in the directions, I informed them to be polite to other students. Well, what I got was that they answered very politely, and maybe factually, but not necessarily about the mathematics. So I learned that I had to be very specific of what I meant about factual and thoughtful. So they may have answered, that was a very nice graph that was very colorful, and the comments were very factual and very thoughtful and very kind, but they didn't have anything to do with the statistics, which is what I intended. So I did modify. So I did come back and modify, and I took out some of the selections, and it was either correct or not correct. For this one, it was on just population. Did they answer it correct or not correct? And did they comment on the student's post with factual and thoughtful comments about the study and the statistics topic? It does not count if you simply say, I like your post, or compliment the student. Commented on the student's post, but comment was very short, less than 5 words, was related to the study and the statistics comment, or no comment to the student. So I learned in both directions and the rubric to be very specific about what I wanted the student to provide in their answers. Some observations. My rubric was not great. I had to modify that after the first discussion. After the first one, in future discussions, when I modified my rubric and my directions, the discussions did improve. And I had to post deadlines. Even though this is an asynchronous course, and in general, I'm very loose with deadlines in my online classes, for the discussion board to work, I still had to give a deadline. So during week 1, all students had to make their initial post. During week 2, they all had to make a comment back on the initial post. Because if I didn't give them a deadline, you would have all students waiting till week 6 to make every post, and it didn't work. So to have that discussion going on, for if you had 6 discussions, you had to give them a deadline. You know, day 1 through 5, you had to make your initial comment. Day 6 through 10, they had to make their comments back. So students who needed to make a comment had to have students who had made their initial comment. So that was another thing that I realized. You have to have a deadline on the discussion board post. So, and the students did become better at interacting. They did become more engaged with the discussions, and they did seem to enjoy it. They actually started interacting back and forth with the discussions more. All right, so the thing that I was trying to emulate, I guess, for these discussions was a carousel brainstorming. So one of the things that I use in my face-to-face classes is a carousel type or rotating review. This could be introduce a topic or review a topic. And a lot of times I'll divide the class up into groups and I'll hang posters around the room, and I'll put a question or a topic on the wall, and then I'll have students put their comments on each paper, and then students can rotate around the room and either just read the comments and then come back and discuss in their group, and then we'll discuss those comments as a class. So it depends on how we want to discuss it, how we do that. But a lot of times for these particular ones, usually I'll let each group answer and then let the groups circle around and see what the other groups have answered, then come back and discuss in their original group, and then we have a class discussion. Hawks has provided these questions. These are not questions I created on my own. They are provided in our statistics course, and they're really good discussion questions. So this is one of the ones that I use. Since 1878, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics has calculated the unemployment rate by surveying the group of randomly selected Americans, currently around 60,000 at the time this question was written. In regard to the employment status, a person is considered unemployed if he or she does not have a job or has looked for a job in the previous 4 weeks. Recently, the method for compiling the unemployment rate has been criticized for not giving an accurate estimate of the true percentage of jobless Americans. What is the population of the study? So that's just a simple find the population in that question. And then what group of jobless Americans might be left out based on the way unemployment is defined? And that's your discussion question. So they're going to discuss what groups of Americans might be left out. So this has brought some really good class discussions in our classrooms. And it actually brought some real good, so I've already kind of went through this, how I do this in class. So how I modified it for the asynchronous was I posted this as a discussion board. Each student will post their answer, and they can't see any other students until they post their answer. So once they posted their answer, then all the other students' answers are visible. And then they're expected to respond to at least 3 other students' answers to stimulate a class discussion. And I kind of led them to say, I want you to kind of develop your own definition of unemployment as a class. And these were some of the things that came up in the discussion. And let's see. So the population of the study is all Americans. And so the jobless Americans left out include those who have not looked for a job in 5 weeks or more because they are discouraged, and those who got fired or let go in the past few weeks. Also, if the group is randomly selected, it may not accurately reflect the population because certain areas of Americans may have been neglected. Another student on B said the Americans who are unemployed who have not been actively looking for a job within the past 4 weeks would not be included in the study. In my opinion, that number would be a lot greater, especially in today's day. And then they really got in a big discussion back and forth about if they're not looking for work, are they unemployed or not? And that's the idea. Are those students? And then they get to talking about full-time college students, stay-at-home parents, parents on disability, and homeless transients. Are they unemployed or are they not unemployed? So they really got into a really nice discussion on this back and forth. And it was nice to see that they were very polite to each other, and it was like you could see them kind of develop these thoughts with each other of things that maybe they hadn't even thought of before. And I don't know that they ever came to a consensus, but that's really not the point. The point was that they were engaged with the class and with the discussion. So that one turned out really well. The next one was IRB. The Institutional Review Board is a group of people who review the design of a study to make sure that it's appropriate and that no unnecessary harm will come to the subjects involved. Informed consent involves the completely disclosing to participants the goals and procedures involved in the study and obtaining their agreement to participate. As you read the paragraph on the IRB, you may have thought that the phrase unnecessary harm was strange. After all, isn't all harm unnecessary? Not really. When you have a sinus infection and go to the doctor, they inflict the pain of a shot in order to administer the medicine that will make you better. That harm is necessary. Discuss below how you would define the term unnecessary harm in an experiment with human subjects. Under what conditions would any harm be allowable? And at this point, they were starting to really get into good discussions. And since we're under COVID, this was, I think they really enjoyed this discussion. I only had permission from some students, so I had to be careful which ones I posted. But, you know, I would define unnecessary harm as the intentional infliction of mental or physical pain, suffering on a participant beyond what they have been informed of and consented to in their pre-experiment documentation. Harm would be allowable if the participants were informed of and consented to the possibility of being harmed during the IRB approval experiment. Also, if the harm yields benefits that greatly improve the quality of life of the participant, harm could be allowable. For example, if the experiment were a heart medication that could extend the lives of people who were about to pass away from heart problems, the harm side effects that come from the medication may be worth the possibility of living longer. And then a reply was, so if the harm could possibly have long-term or permanent effects, should it be risked? And then somebody come back, yes, I see how that would be kind of strange, and agree any harm that comes to a subject of a test or survey would be really unnecessary unless it would be related to your health, like important treatments and immunization if you have the flu or COVID would be necessary to keep it from being spread to others. It would be unnecessary if you have a certain condition and they treat you as you having something totally different, or perform lab tests if you just have a simple cold. It should not be allowable to undergo tests or treatments that have nothing to do with why you might be at the doctor, why you might be sick. So they really got into that discussion because it was really contemporary and related to the COVID and what was going on right now. So they were really engaged with that discussion. Then I asked them, we talk about graphs and different types of graphs and statistics. And I asked them to post a sample of a graph that we have studied in this class. Upload a picture, tell which type of graph it is, and do cite their source. Tell if it was qualitative or quantitative data. And then I wanted the other students to post reply. And they were also supposed to, you know, verify if a student had something wrong to correct their work. So the thing that happened with this one, I think I have something out of order. The problem that happened with this one was, this was where I really got a lot of comments back that were like, oh, your graph was really pretty. I really liked your graph. That was really interesting data that showed they really didn't comment on whether it was actually qualitative or quantitative when students got it wrong. And we got a lot of graphs that were not connected with the course too. So that told me maybe two things. One, I'm not doing good enough job of teaching the graphs. And two, they were not about to correct other students. So that was an interesting, I learned a lot from probably that assignment, was that graphs are something I will have to work on how I'm presenting in the future, because that class did not get the graphs. So I will have to go back and review how I'm teaching graphs, because they did not have a good understanding of graphs. So definitely there was a problem there. And then they looked at investments, and this problem it gave them 3 sets of data: find the mean, median, variance, standard deviation, and then to decide basically the volatility of it and where would you invest your money. And the interesting thing of it is you decide, are you a risk taker? Are you not a risk taker? So which one would you prefer to invest your money in? Because one's going to possibly make you more money. One's going to be the safer investment. So once they decide which one's the safer or the more volatile, they can decide where that they prefer to invest their money. And that was interesting. I think they actually kind of enjoyed that, because they could decide which one that they prefer to invest their money in. So they did their data, and then they talked back and forth about which one was right, and they kind of came to a consensus, the correct answers. And they actually did work together on this one. When somebody had it wrong, they did correct each other's until they kind of got a consensus of what the right data was. And then they answered which ones they'd rather be. Oh, I'd rather go for the big money. No, I'm playing it safe. So this one worked really well. It did what I wanted it to do. And here's my comments on the graphs. So, and this was the data. And then this is one that I'm going to use for the spring semester. So when we talk about qualitative and quantitative, and we classify types of data. So I create these cards, and these are some of the sample cards, and I hand them out to students. I think I have about 30 of them. And then we talk about it, and it's an interactive lecture I do in class. So first thing I do is I say, divide all your cards, and I let them work in groups, usually 2 to 3 students at the most together. And I say, okay, here's your cards. This is the definition of qualitative. This is the definition of quantitative. All right, now let's pause. You take all those cards in front of you and sort them. Which ones are qualitative, which ones are quantitative? And they do that. And then we stop and we talk about what nominal and ordinal means. I said, okay, now go under the qualitative stack, divide those up in nominal and ordinal. And then once they've done that, I say, okay, now under the quantitative stack, let's divide them up in interval and ratio. So they end up with 4 stacks of cards, all divided up. And then I have them take a picture of their cards all laid out on their table, and they have samples of all those, which they're going to use in their homework. So they're going to do that in their homework, to decide all those categories, and they have those as samples. So what I'm going to do for homework is I'm going to allow students, and I think I'm going to use these groups throughout the semester for the spring. I'm going to do a quick survey at the beginning of the class and find out students that have kind of available times, like let them do a survey and say, like, who would have like mornings on weekdays available, who would have evenings on weekdays available, I mean, who has times on weekends available, and divide them up in groups of maybe 3 to 5 at the most. And then once they're in groups, then they can pick their times to meet together. And I'm going to give them little activities they can do together. Then they can go into, we have Teams available, and we have Blackboard Collaborate too. But we'll work together and we'll do some of these. They can do the first one with me, and they'll go in their group and they'll do whatever activity I give them. And then they can record that, then I can go in and watch it later. So that'll be kind of a little synchronous meeting, but it'll only be like 3 students at a time. So rather than trying to get the whole class together, they'll be able to do some little group activities. So I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm going to try this. And so this is one of the things that I'm going to use. And I don't know if you've seen a Google Jamboard before, but I thought about letting everybody do it, but when there's so many people, we're not going to try that. So Shriver's going to be my helper here. And let me see, we're going to open up. Shriver, do you still have that link or do you need it?
It's the same one from we looked at earlier. I should still.
Yes.
I've got it open here.
Okay. So what this is this is a Google Jamboard, and I've left it in my PowerPoint, so you can go into this later if Shriver shares the PowerPoint with you. What happens is, here's the qualitative and here's the quantitative, and these are just sticky notes where I've wrote all the different things.
Did you pull the Jamboard over?
It should be. Is it there now?
Or the full window? I'm not seeing it here.
Okay. New share. Let's try this. Did that do it?
Yes, it did.
Okay. So now it should be, I don't think so what students can do is just start moving these, and you can start moving. So like bank account or PIN numbers, would that be a quantitative or a qualitative? And oops, I've got quantitative on both of them. That's really smart. Didn't notice that the other day. All right, so that would be qualitative because it's not a number. So you can slide it over here. And jersey numbers are a label. Temperatures would be a measurement. Freezing point, can you move them? You have to click on the arrow first, Shriver.
Oh, I thought I moved one.
Oh, okay, maybe you did. All right. So widths of doors is a quantitative, and freezing point, birth years. There you go. So we don't have to take time to do them all, but then you can sort them, and then you can just break these up and then let them sort those. Types of pets, prices, sizes, titles, numbers, birth order, positions in line, birth years. So change in weight. Should be 8 on each side. We got one on the wrong side. Years. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That goes over here, right? First, second, third, fourth is ordinal. Are we right now? Now I'm confused. All right. So anyway, you can sort them left and right. And then you can sort them by nominal and ordinal. So first, second, third, fourth would be ordinal, right? Temperatures. I'm not going to do them. So I didn't bring my key. Now you're going to get me all confused. So maybe I better let somebody in here know statistics. So I should have stuck with superheroes. All right. So if you want to do this, what word comes to mind when you think of active learning for asynchronous online courses after this presentation? So if you want to, you can use, I can't see the.
Looks like you still got the Jamboard up. Are you going back to the PowerPoint?
Oh, see, I don't know why it's doing that. That's funny. Okay. All right. There it goes.
Yep, we can see it now. Perfect.
All right. So back to the PowerPoint. So what word comes to mind when you think of active learning for asynchronous online courses? I can't see the top because of the Zoom, so I can't tell you where to text or where to go to. I'm sorry. Edward Williams raised his hand. I can see that. I can start taking questions while they're doing that. That's my last thing.
I put the link into the chat for everyone, if that's easier. So let everyone do that.
I can start. That's my last thing. So
perfect. I've got a number of questions, so if we want to have people.
yeah, I can start doing questions. That can stay up.
Perfect. All right. So we can kind of start from the top here. All right. So Edward asked if for this class you're using Excel, Minitab, JMP, others, and how are you using it in this class? If so.
Say that again.
Edward asked if you were using Excel, Minitab, JMP, or others.
We use Excel. We use Excel.
Okay. And then kind of going back to the discussion rubric, John asked the 2 and 3 options. What do they mean in that discussion rubric?
Oh, the 2 and 3 options. Okay, like where I had like 1 and 2 and 3. That was where they commented to student 1, the comment 1, comment 2, and comment 3. Is that what he means? I just didn't have time to put, I didn't have room to type all that out on my PowerPoint. So it was, the first line was, did they answer the question correctly? And the next 3 lines were, did they comment to student 1? Did they comment to student 2? Did they comment to student 3? And they were all the same selections as the second line. I just didn't have room to put that in my PowerPoint 3 times. So I was trying to say ditto, ditto, ditto.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
I think that answers it. Let me see if they said anything back. Not yet, so that must have answered it. So Steve asked, do you require to post replies on separate days of the week? That's an issue that they are experiencing because their students only participate only on the due date.
Now, I just gave them a time frame, and you're right. They're gonna post on the due date.
And then they also asked, how do you minimize students copying and pasting their responses from the internet? And do you check for plagiarism on any of those?
I didn't have too much problem with plagiarism because the way I asked the question, they kind of had to answer the question. But it's probably something I will need to watch for in the future. That's a good question. Yeah, it's probably something I need to watch closer for.
So another question here, do you provide guidelines for your students to submit substantive participation? Do you give examples of what is considered substantive participation and what is not?
I will in the future. That I think that was one of the lessons that I learned, that this was my first time doing it online. So I think that was one of the things that I learned, that, yeah, you're going to have to provide better examples of what you want. And that you have to teach students what you want. And, you know, I know this lesson, but I fall in that trap every time. I expect students to know what I want. Students don't know what we want, and we do have to teach them.
And then we have another question. How do you encourage students who did not participate in those discussions originally?
I usually email students and send them reminders. And I also, we have Starfish, so we do Starfish reminders.
Okay. And so let's see here. Sorry, going through, there are a couple comments here. I saw that John did confirm that that answered your question. So I answered earlier. So from Margaret here, how do you turn off the discussion posts to allow only the responses to be posted?
I can't. Yeah, I can't turn it off where they can only post responses. So they can continue to post to the original, but I don't have to grade them after a certain date.
And Laura asked, what % of your course grade do these discussions make up?
I would have to go back and look at my syllabus. I didn't look. I did not make them a large portion of my grade because this was the first time I was trying it, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work. So I'm thinking it was 5 to 10%.
Let's see here. I'll let you answer this one. John asked, what textbook are you using for this course?
Beginning statistics. That one.
And I'll put a link to that in the chat if anyone wants to take a look.
We have the newest edition.
And Steve was asking, instead of the shuffleboard, I don't know if it was the Jamboard, but they asked what software you were using for that.
That was just when you go to Google, it's just their Jamboard. It's one of the things, if you go into Google, when you on their little dots, Jamboard is one of the selections you can pick.
And then another question from John. So they asked, what learning format do you use? Was it Blackboard or else? I know it is Blackboard, but then they asked, is there any pros or cons that you found with using Blackboard then?
There's lots of pros and cons with Blackboard. We don't have a choice. And we just transferred to Blackboard Ultra, which has been a nightmare of its own, but we don't have a choice. So.
Okay. And then it looks like we've got one more question here. Is your audience of students business, engineering, or mathematics? Does it make much difference to this discussion? And if not, why not?
I teach at a community college. I'd say I have business majors, a lot of health science technology majors, and a few transfer students that could be anything. So I have a good mix of students, a lot of culinary arts students.
So that's all the questions that we had so far. I don't know if you wanted to talk anything about the poll now, though. Oh, I don't know. Tina, I was saying it looks like we're out of questions for right now, so I wasn't sure if you had anything else to go over with this poll here.
I'm going to go to my next slide. At this link, I do have a lot of my active learning files that when this is a Google Drive. Through the years, I have just saved articles, links to websites, and I just save them in my Google Drive. So they're not necessary online links, files, but it's just things for active learning. So if I find something new, I save them there. I will add this PowerPoint for today there. You're welcome to go there and just see if there's any resources there that are useful to you. And I'll go ahead and on the next, there is the link to that Jamboard. You're welcome to go in there and play with that today. There's actually 10 different, I think 5, I don't know. There's several different ones that is that same, several different pages that is that same Jamboard. So if several people go in there and it seems really crowded, just go to a different one page. I'm perfectly fine. Go in there and play with that. If it seems really crowded today, go in tomorrow. I don't mind. That Jamboard's just created for this. We just didn't want, we decided not to do it live because there's so many people in the session that we were afraid it would lock up. But there it is. You're welcome to go in and play in it. I created it for this session, and you're welcome to go in there and just play with that and see how it works, and see if you'd like to do one of those for your class. They're pretty. The way I learned to do it was I watched a YouTube, how to do a Jamboard. Somebody did one in a session, and I watched a YouTube and I started doing Jamboards. They're pretty easy. And I have used them in classes. And 2 suggestions, you do one of 2 things. You send students to the same one and tell them which page to do. That doesn't work really well unless you're doing it live in groups. Or you save Jamboards with different names and you send that link to each group. So if I'm going to do this for my class, I'm going to save a Jamboard called Group 1, a Jamboard called Group 2, and I'm going to send that link to that group, and that's what they would work on. And then I could just add another page if they're going to do another activity. So each of their Jamboards, if we do future ones, would be in their file. And that's how that works. And there's lots of other things you can do with that. If you watch Jamboard suggestions, there's some really cool things you can do. Right, and that's all I have.
All right, so it looks like we did have one more question that came in while you were going over that. So I thought I'd just ask that one real quick before we finish up.
Okay.
Someone asked, do you make audio visuals of you solving an exercise, for example, building a confidence interval and post them to Blackboard or anything like that?
Yes, I do. I try to keep my videos short. So I make short videos that are single exercises each. So like how to solve a single problem. And then I post those into my Blackboard shell. Yes.
Awesome. All righty then. So it does look like we're coming right up to the end of our time. So I want to say a quick thank you to Professor Ragsdale for, thank you to everyone for attending today. We can't have webinars without the attendees. So I really do appreciate everyone who came out to join us. If you're interested in requesting demo access to any of the Hawks products, you can feel free to click the link that I'm pasting into the chat right now. That should be in there. There we go. Also, if you have any questions about this presentation or any other ones that we've done recently, you can direct those to marketing@hawkslearning.com. We will also be emailing out a link to view the recording of this webinar after it is available today. But on that note, I hope everyone has a good rest of their day. And I'll say one more thank you to Professor Ragsdale for joining us today.
Thank you. And thank everybody for being here.